I learned the hard way that a locked door cannot protect you from people who believe they own your life. It was a freezing Thursday evening when I pulled into my driveway and noticed a strange silver sedan idling near the curb. My parents were sitting inside the vehicle, staring straight ahead without waving or making a single movement toward me. They waited just long enough for me to spot the beautifully wrapped box sitting directly on my front doorstep before they accelerated and disappeared down the street. A delicate white card was tucked beneath the satin ribbon, bearing 4 words written in my mother's unmistakable, rigid handwriting that simply read, "Do not make a scene." Every single instinct told me to leave the package exactly where it was, but that familiar warning felt like an echo of the countless commands that dictated my entire childhood. I carried the heavy box into the entryway and carefully sliced through the ribbon with a pocket knife. The very first thing resting inside was a crystal-clear photograph of my 8-year-old son sleeping peacefully in his own bed. Right beneath the photo lay an exact duplicate key to my house, sitting on top of a thick legal envelope stamped with the name of a notorious family court attorney. A sudden wave of nausea hit me so hard that my knees buckled, forcing me to lean against the wall for support. Before reading another word of the documents, I dialed 911 with shaking hands. 2 officers arrived within minutes, immediately separating the items and instructing me not to touch anything else on the table. That was the exact moment my husband walked through the front door, stopping dead in his tracks at the sight of the police uniforms. He looked at the open box, his face turning completely pale as a look of pure horror washed over his features. He whispered that he hoped they had not actually gone through with it, which instantly terrified me because it meant he knew about a threat I was completely blind to. Before I reveal what else was hidden in that box, tell me, where are you watching from right now? My husband's name was Arthur, and the moment those words escaped his lips, both officers shifted their attention directly to him. For several agonizing seconds, he stood frozen, looking back and forth between my face and the contents of the container. He finally pointed to the envelope, asking if anyone had reviewed the legal pages yet. When the officer confirmed they had not, Arthur swallowed hard and admitted that my father had approached him outside his office 3 weeks prior. My father, whose name was Harrison, had cornered Arthur in the parking lot to present a temporary emergency guardianship agreement. Harrison had claimed it was just a precautionary measure in case Arthur and I were ever involved in a serious accident together. When Arthur angrily demanded to know why such a document was necessary, Harrison calmly explained that my mother believed I had become completely unstable. Arthur told him to stay away from our family, but Harrison just smiled and said the decision might not be up to us. Arthur had kept the encounter a secret because he desperately wanted to protect me from the emotional wounds I had spent years trying to heal. I wanted to feel angry at him for keeping me in the dark, but the box sitting between us proved that our silence had only given my parents more room to operate. The senior officer introduced himself as Officer Davis and pulled on a pair of blue latex gloves. Beneath the legal documents, he uncovered a digital audio recorder and a black flash drive. He also pulled out 6 surveillance photographs, a small wooden toy train, and a worn stuffed bear that I recognized instantly. The toy train belonged to my son, Leo, and the stuffed bear had mysteriously vanished from our home 4 months ago after a brief family visit. As Officer Davis lifted the bear, a heavy floral scent drifted into the room. It was my mother's signature perfume, the exact same scent that used to linger outside my bedroom door when I was a teenager. The photographs were far worse than the missing toys because they documented our daily lives over the course of 2 months. One image showed Leo eating breakfast at our kitchen island, while another captured him playing behind the fence at his elementary school. In one of the outdoor photos, a faint reflection in a car window caught the partial face of the photographer. It was not my mother, Clara, or my father, Harrison, but an absolute stranger. Officer Davis immediately called for a supervisor and a forensic technician, realizing this was no longer a simple domestic disagreement. He asked if my parents had ever possessed a key, and Arthur admitted that Harrison had helped us repair the back door lock the previous spring. We had changed the front locks after cutting ties with them, but we completely forgot about the rear entrance. The realization that they had been entering our home while we slept made the room feel incredibly cold. The envelope contained a fully drafted petition asking a family court judge to grant my parents immediate custody of Leo. The attached affidavits claimed that I missed crucial medical appointments, left my child unattended, and suffered from severe emotional delusions. One of the pages even featured a signature that was supposed to belong to Arthur, but he shook his head in disgust and stated it was a complete forgery. There was also a letter from a therapist I had never heard of. Officer Davis carefully placed the digital recorder into an evidence bag, noting a strip of black adhesive tape on the back with a label that read Kitchen 2. The implication that there was a Kitchen 1 hung heavily in the air as the officers requested permission to search the house for surveillance equipment. Within an hour, they discovered a miniature camera hidden inside the casing of a smoke detector directly above our dining table. They found another audio device hidden behind the ventilation grate just a few feet away from Leo's bedroom door. The camera did not use our home wireless network, meaning whoever placed it there had to physically return to the house to retrieve the memory cards. I instantly remembered my mother showing up at a school fundraiser 2 weeks ago, hugging me tightly despite my attempts to back away. Now I realized she was likely keeping me distracted while my father entered our house. The forensic technician photographed every single device before Officer Davis advised us to find a safe place to stay for the night. Arthur called his sister, Chloe, who lived across the county, and arranged for her to pick up Leo from a birthday party without revealing the details. Before we walked out the door, Officer Davis asked if my parents knew Arthur would be working late that evening. When I told him my mother had called Arthur's office that morning, his expression darkened completely. Officer Davis explained that my parents likely expected me to open the box completely alone in the dark house. The hidden message beneath the ribbon was not a request for peace, but a direct command to keep me isolated and compliant. As we walked toward our car, the technician emerged from the hallway holding a final evidence bag. Inside was an older memory card labeled with my name and a date from 8 years ago, the exact week Leo was born. We spent the night staring at the ceiling in Chloe's guest room, jumping at every unfamiliar sound outside the window. Leo believed our sudden departure was due to a broken water pipe, and he innocently asked if his grandparents knew where we were staying. The question broke my heart because it proved just how deeply Clara had inserted herself into my son's mind. I pulled him close and promised him he was safe, watching him until his breathing became slow and steady. The following morning, Detective Laura Vance from the stalking unit called us down to the police station with an update. The older memory card did not come from our current house, but contained a massive archive of files collected over nearly a decade. The earliest file was a secret audio recording of my mother talking to me in the hospital room just hours after I gave birth. She had been softly pressuring me to sign a medical authorization form, which I had refused. On the tape, her voice sounded incredibly gentle, but the audio continued after I left the room to walk down the hallway. My father's voice suddenly appeared on the recording, telling Clara that I would eventually break once I realized how little control I actually possessed. Hearing those words years later was like discovering a trapdoor beneath my feet. The archive also contained copies of our financial records, Arthur's work schedules, and detailed notes tracking our private arguments. Ordinary life events had been systematically twisted into evidence of severe parental neglect and instability. A rescheduled dental appointment was documented as medical abandonment, and a photo of me holding a glass of champagne was labeled as a substance abuse issue. Detective Vance explained that my parents were not documenting actual danger, but were carefully manufacturing a narrative to present to a judge. She warned us that Harrison had already called the precinct to claim the box was just an innocent family scrapbook. Our attorney, Nora Vance, met us that afternoon to review the fraudulent custody petition and noticed a fatal flaw in the paperwork. The license number on the therapist's letter belonged to a practicing professional, but the name did not match the state registry. The notary stamp on Arthur's forged signature was genuine, but it had been reported stolen from a local shipping office 3 months earlier. My parents had built a puzzle out of stolen identities, assuming no one would check the pieces. That evening, Detective Vance called with the first major break in the criminal investigation. The serial number from the kitchen camera led to a local security shop where a man had purchased the equipment using cash. The store's surveillance video clearly showed the face of the unknown man from Leo's school photograph. His name was Donald Brooks, a disgraced private investigator whose license had been suspended the previous year for illegal tracking and wiretapping. Phone records showed dozens of calls between Donald Brooks and a business line registered directly to my father's firm. An hour later, a notification popped up on my phone showing a voice message from my mother. Her voice was terrifyingly warm as she mentioned hearing that Leo might be stressed, offering to look after him until things settled down. She concluded the message by whispering that a judge would care deeply about stability, warning me not to make myself look unstable. The situation escalated drastically the next morning when Nora discovered that my parents had officially attempted to file the emergency petition at the courthouse. They were seeking an immediate order to remove Leo from our care before we could even be notified of a hearing. Their petition claimed we had fled the home after a violent domestic dispute and that the police response at our house was due to my erratic behavior. They had used our own call for help as evidence against us. Because the petition alleged immediate danger to a child, the presiding judge ordered an emergency hearing for the following afternoon. Detective Vance provided a certified declaration confirming the ongoing criminal investigation into the hidden cameras and the forged documents. When we walked into the courtroom, Harrison and Clara were dressed immaculately, looking entirely unbothered. Harrison actually looked at me with deep disappointment, as if I were a child who had brought home a poor report card. Inside the courtroom, their lawyer painted a picture of two grieving, devoted grandparents who were simply terrified for their grandson's safety. He claimed the surveillance photos were taken out of genuine concern and that the duplicate key was just an old spare. Then Nora stood up and placed the original, uncropped photographs directly next to the versions my parents had submitted. The original school photo showed Arthur standing just a few feet away from Leo, completely debunking the claim that he was left unattended. The judge demanded an immediate explanation for the altered evidence, causing my parents' attorney to nervously look at his clients. Clara suddenly stood up against her lawyer's wishes, loudly declaring that I had always been an impulsive girl and that Arthur was far too weak to lead a family. She insisted that a mother must do whatever is necessary when her daughter refuses to listen to reason. Her outburst completely shattered the dignified image she had tried so hard to project. Nora then played the voicemail where Clara threatened my stability, which completely sealed their fate in the eyes of the court. The judge denied the custody petition, issued a strict restraining order, and referred the forged documents to the district attorney's fraud unit. Outside the courtroom, Harrison lost his temper entirely, stepping past the court officers to hiss that I had no idea what kind of damage I had just started. I looked him dead in the eye and told him to let the world see the evidence. As they entered the elevator, Clara glared at me with pure hatred while typing furiously on her cell phone. Less than 5 minutes later, every single member of our extended family received a massive text blast claiming I had suffered a mental breakdown. What Clara did not realize in her panic was that she had accidentally attached the wrong file to the group message. Beneath her text was a high-resolution photograph of our kitchen taken directly from the hidden smoke detector camera. The embedded data in that accidental attachment linked the file to a laptop registered to Harrison's corporate office. Within 48 hours, police executed search warrants at their estate, recovering surveillance invoices, the stolen notary seal, and binders filled with details about our lives. Donald Brooks was apprehended at a motel 2 days later, immediately turning on my parents to save himself from prison time. He admitted Harrison paid him thousands of dollars to wiretap our home. My parents were formally arrested the following week on multiple felony charges, including burglary, stalking, conspiracy, and identity theft. The social fallout was immediate, as Harrison was stripped of his board positions and Clara was asked to leave her church committees. We spent the next month replacing every lock, computer, and phone in our home, finally establishing the boundaries I should have set a decade ago. As Clara was led from the courthouse after her bail was revoked, she saw me standing across the lobby, completely free from her control.